Have you ever wondered why, even surrounded by people, you feel so alone? Perhaps it's no coincidence that your attempts at connection keep failing. What if your lack of friends isn't a flaw, but a message from your collective unconscious? Carl Jung, the pioneer of analytical psychology, revealed that our social voids can be portals to spiritual transformation. What few know is that Jung considered social isolation not as a curse, but as a calling from the soul. In the following pages, I'll reveal what your reduced social circle is really trying to tell you about your spiritual destiny. The truth will surprise you. What you consider your greatest weakness may actually be your greatest purpose. Are you ready to discover the hidden meaning behind the loneliness that afflicts you so much? Have you ever noticed how some relationships seem doomed from the start? You reach out, you try to connect, but something always goes wrong. This isn't random bad luck. According to Carl Jung, these patterns reveal a deeper truth about your spiritual journey. The social shadow is the first key to understanding why you might struggle with friendships. In Jung's framework, the shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or hidden away. It's the collection of qualities and impulses we deem unacceptable, pushing them deep into our unconscious mind. But here's the fascinating part. Just because we've banished these elements doesn't mean they disappear. They continue to operate behind the scenes, influencing our behaviors in ways we don't recognize. When it comes to your social life, your shadow can sabotage connections before they even begin. Perhaps you unconsciously push people away because intimacy triggers vulnerability you're not ready to face. Or maybe you're drawn to friends who mirror your unacknowledged traits, creating relationships that inevitably become uncomfortable mirrors, reflecting back what you've tried to hide from yourself. Jung believed that these patterns aren't merely psychological quirks, but spiritual signposts. Your unconscious isn't working against you, it's trying to guide you toward wholeness. The discomfort you feel in social situations might actually be an invitation to explore your shadow elements and integrate them into your conscious self. Consider the common experience of feeling inexplicably irritated by someone you've just met. According to Jung, this immediate reaction often indicates a shadow projection. Something about this person reflects a quality you've rejected in yourself. Your lack of friendships may be pointing to significant shadow material that needs addressing for your spiritual growth. This process can be both painful and illuminating. A person who struggles to maintain friendships might discover they carry deep-seated fears of abandonment from childhood experiences. Rather than recognizing these fears, they preemptively reject others before they can be rejected. The shadow knows this pattern, even when the conscious mind doesn't. The spiritual meaning behind this dynamic is profound. Jung saw the integration of the shadow as essential to what he called individuation, the process of becoming your complete, authentic self. Your social difficulties aren't punishment, they're catalysts for inner work that few people have the courage to undertake. This understanding transforms loneliness from a problem to be solved into a teacher, guiding you toward greater self-awareness. When you begin to recognize how your unconscious patterns affect your social interactions, you gain the power to make different choices. You can start to observe your automatic reactions rather than being controlled by them. The work of engaging with your social shadow involves asking yourself uncomfortable questions. What qualities do you most harshly judge in others? Which types of people trigger strong emotional reactions in you? What patterns keep repeating in your failed relationships? These questions can reveal the shadow elements most actively influencing your social life. Dreams can provide powerful insights into this territory. Jung considered dreams the royal road to the unconscious, where shadow material often appears as characters or situations that provoke strong emotional responses. Paying attention to social scenarios in your dreams might reveal patterns you're unaware of in waking life. As you begin to acknowledge and integrate these disowned parts of yourself, something remarkable happens. The energy previously spent keeping these elements suppressed becomes available to you. Many people report feeling lighter, more authentic, and paradoxically more capable of genuine connection after engaging with their shadow material. This journey isn't about fixing yourself to become more popular. It's about understanding that your social challenges serve a spiritual purpose, guiding you toward wholeness and authenticity. The very qualities that might make you feel like an outsider often contain gifts that can only emerge through the courage to look within. The first step toward transformation is simply acknowledging that your social difficulties might have deeper meaning. By viewing your challenges through Jung's perspective, you open yourself to the possibility that what seems like a personal failing may actually be the beginning of a profound spiritual awakening. As we explore the deeper meaning behind your social landscape, we must understand a powerful force that might be guiding your path from within, the hermit archetype. This brings us to our second insight into why meaningful friendships might remain elusive in your life. In Jung's theory of archetypes, universal patterns and images that reside in the collective unconscious, the hermit represents the seeker of truth who must journey inward through solitude. This archetypal energy exists within all humans, but in some souls, it manifests more strongly, creating a natural inclination towards solitary exploration rather than social immersion. If you've always felt different, as though you observe life slightly apart from others, the hermit archetype might be particularly active in your psyche. This isn't a flaw or social inadequacy, it's a calling. Jung believed that archetypes shape our destinies in ways that align with our soul's purpose. Your limited social circle might be a manifestation of this archetypal pattern, guiding you toward the specific form of wisdom that can only be found in solitude. The hermit's journey involves withdrawing from the noise and distraction of social life to hear the quieter voices of inner wisdom. In our hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with external opinions, values, and perspectives. The hermit archetype creates a natural buffer, allowing some souls the space to develop their own relationship with truth, rather than simply adopting consensus reality. This doesn't mean you're destined for permanent isolation. Rather, periods of relative solitude may be necessary stages in your spiritual development. Jung himself experienced an intense period of self-imposed isolation after his break with Freud, during which he explored his own unconscious through active imagination. This period, which he later called his confrontation with the unconscious, became the foundation for his most significant contributions to psychology and spiritual understanding. The spiritual meaning behind the hermit's path is profound. In solitude, you're forced to confront yourself without the distractions that social interaction often provides. Many spiritual traditions recognize this principle. From monastic retreats to vision quests, solitude has long been understood as a catalyst for spiritual awakening. If the hermit archetype is active in your life, you may notice certain patterns. You likely value depth over breadth in relationships. You might feel drained by casual social interaction, but come alive in one-on-one conversations about meaningful topics. You probably need significant time alone to process your experiences and may have rich inner resources, imagination, creativity, or contemplative practices that sustain you during periods of social quietude. This archetypal pattern creates a different relationship with friendship than our society typically validates. While modern culture often equates social popularity with success, the hermit knows that truth sometimes requires stepping outside the collective. Your smaller social circle might be precisely what allows you to perceive realities that remain invisible to those embedded in group consciousness. Jung would suggest examining how this archetype manifests in your dreams and fantasies. Do you dream of remote cabins, lighthouses, or isolated journeys? Are you drawn to stories of individuals who step outside society to find truth? These attractions aren't random. They're the hermit archetype speaking through your imagination, guiding you toward your authentic path. Understanding this aspect of your psyche transforms how you view your social situation. Rather than seeing your limited friendships as evidence of inadequacy, you can recognize them as supporting a necessary phase of spiritual development. This doesn't mean rejecting connection entirely. Even hermits historically often maintained a few deep relationships, but it does mean honoring your need for space and solitude without judgment. The hermit's wisdom ultimately benefits not just the individual, but the broader community. Those who journey inward often return with insights that can illuminate paths for others. Many of history's greatest spiritual teachers, artists and innovators spent crucial periods in relative isolation, allowing them to perceive truth beyond conventional thinking. Your spiritual journey might require precisely the social landscape you currently have. The friends who remain in your life, despite your tendencies toward withdrawal, are likely those who resonate with your authentic self. These connections, though fewer in number, often contain a depth and meaning that compensates for their scarcity. As you continue exploring why you don't have many friends, consider embracing rather than resisting the hermit's energy in your life. This doesn't mean resigning yourself to loneliness, but recognizing that your soul might be guiding you toward a path where quality of connection matters more than quantity, and where periods of solitude serve your highest development. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the Sim Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Building on our exploration of the hermit archetype, we now face a profound tension that exists at the heart of human experience. This tension might explain why you find yourself with fewer friends than others, and why that might actually be aligned with your deeper spiritual purpose. Jung's concept of individuation represents one of his most revolutionary contributions to our understanding of the human journey. Individuation is the process of becoming your complete, authentic self, integrating all aspects of your psyche and differentiating yourself from collective norms and expectations. This process stands in natural tension with our equally powerful need for connection and belonging. Most people navigate life primarily through connection. They define themselves through relationships, social roles, and group identities. There's nothing wrong with this path. Humans are inherently social beings, but for some souls, the call to individuation speaks more loudly than the call to connection. If you're one of these people, your limited social circle might be a natural consequence of prioritizing inner authenticity over external validation. Think about the moments when you felt most alive and aligned with your true self. Were these moments typically experienced in group settings, or did they occur during periods of reflection, creative expression, or deep conversation with just one other person? Jung would suggest that your answer reveals important information about your spiritual path. The individuation journey requires developing a strong relationship with your own inner voice, your intuition, your values, your sense of meaning. This voice often speaks in whispers that can be drowned out by the louder chorus of social opinion. Maintaining fewer social connections might be your soul's way of creating the necessary space to hear these whispers. This doesn't mean that individuating people don't need or want friends. Rather, they tend to approach friendship differently. Quality matters infinitely more than quantity. One friend who accepts your authentic self, with all its complexities and contradictions, provides more nourishment than a dozen relationships where you must wear a mask or play a role. The spiritual dilemma emerges when we feel torn between these two powerful needs, to become our true selves and to belong. Our culture heavily emphasizes the importance of social connection, often pathologizing those who don't prioritize extensive social networks. This cultural bias can create shame or self-doubt for those whose souls are calling them toward individuation. Jung would suggest that this dilemma isn't meant to be permanently resolved in favor of either extreme. Rather, it represents a dynamic tension that generates energy for growth. The individuating person eventually learns to bring their authentic self back into community in ways that enrich both the individual and the collective. But this integration can only happen after periods of relative solitude and self-discovery. The spiritual meaning behind this tension is profound. Your smaller social circle might be creating exactly the conditions needed for your unique gifts to emerge. Many of history's most transformative figures, artists, philosophers, spiritual leaders, experience periods of relative isolation as an essential part of developing their contributions to humanity. Consider how this dynamic might be playing out in your life. Perhaps you've noticed that maintaining numerous social connections requires compromising aspects of yourself that feel essential. Or maybe you've experienced the disorientation that comes from absorbing too many external perspectives without adequate time to process them through your own unique lens. Jung's perspective transforms these experiences from personal failings into necessary stages of growth. The discomfort you feel when trying to fit into large social groups might be your psyche's way of protecting your individuation process. Your tendency to withdraw after periods of intense social engagement might be a healthy response to the need to reintegrate and realign with your authentic self. This understanding doesn't eliminate the very real pain that can come from feeling different or disconnected. Humans need belonging as surely as we need food and water. But recognizing the spiritual purpose behind your social patterns can help you meet this need in ways that support rather than undermine your development. Instead of forcing yourself into social situations that drain your energy, you might focus on cultivating a few deep connections with people who appreciate your authentic self. Instead of judging yourself for needing more solitude than others, you might honor this need as supporting your unique contribution to the world. The spiritual wisdom here isn't about choosing between individuation and connection, but learning to dance between them in a rhythm that supports your highest development. This dance looks different for each person, which is why comparing your social life to others offers little useful information about your path. As you continue exploring why you don't have many friends, consider that your soul might be orchestrating exactly the social landscape needed for your spiritual evolution. The spaces between your relationships aren't empty. They're filled with the potential for self-discovery and authentic growth. As we've explored the tension between individuation and connection, we now turn to one of Jung's most mystical concepts, one that might transform how you view the seemingly random pattern of people entering and leaving your life. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that can't be explained by cause and effect, represents Jung's recognition that the universe sometimes communicates through patterns and symbols rather than linear logic. These meaningful coincidences often become more apparent during periods of solitude and inner focus, when we're less distracted by constant social stimulation. Your history of failed social connections and friendships might contain synchronistic patterns, revealing important guidance about your path. Jung would suggest looking for recurring themes in these encounters. Do certain types of people repeatedly enter your life for short periods? Do relationships often end for similar reasons? These patterns aren't random. They may contain messages about your authentic needs and purpose. Think of each person who enters your life as potentially carrying a piece of information your soul needs. Some people come bearing lessons that can only be delivered through conflict or disappointment. Others appear briefly to introduce an idea, perspective, or opportunity that will become significant later. When viewed through this lens, relationships that don't last aren't failures, but completed transmissions. They served their purpose and then naturally concluded. This synchronistic perspective transforms loneliness from a problem to be solved into a field of potential meaning. The spaces between your social connections become opportunities to notice patterns and receive insights that might remain invisible in a busier social landscape. Jung documented numerous cases where periods of relative isolation coincided with an increase in synchronistic events. During these times, the psyche seems to communicate more directly through external symbols and meaningful coincidences. Your limited social circle might be creating precisely the conditions needed for you to receive this more subtle form of guidance. Consider how this might manifest in everyday experiences. Perhaps you've had the experience of thinking about a specific topic and then encountering a stranger who unexpectedly provides information about that very subject. Or maybe you've noticed that certain names, numbers, or symbols repeatedly appear during periods of important decision-making. These experiences, which many dismiss as coincidence, might be carrying significant messages about your path. The spiritual meaning behind synchronicity is profound. It suggests that reality isn't merely mechanical, but participatory, responding to your inner state and developmental needs. Your social landscape, including its apparent limitations, might be part of this responsive field, arranging itself in ways that support your highest growth. This doesn't mean every social disappointment carries deep meaning, but it does suggest that the overall pattern of your relationships might reveal important information about your spiritual journey. The key is learning to recognize the difference between random events and meaningful coincidences, a skill that develops through attentive observation of both inner and outer experiences. Jung himself experienced profound synchronicities during periods of relative social isolation, particularly during his confrontation with the unconscious after breaking with Freud. These experiences informed his understanding of how the psyche communicates through symbols and meaningful patterns rather than just rational thought. Your own synchronistic experiences might be subtler, a book recommendation from a casual acquaintance that transforms your thinking, a chance meeting that leads to an important opportunity, or a conversation that provides exactly the insight you needed at a crucial moment. These brief but meaningful connections often become more visible when we're not distracted by constant social activity. This understanding offers a new way to approach your social landscape. Rather than focusing primarily on creating lasting friendships, you might become more attentive to the quality and meaning of each encounter. Some people enter your life not to become permanent fixtures, but to deliver specific messages or catalyze particular changes. Recognizing these synchronistic patterns requires presence and attentiveness, qualities that often develop more fully in those who spend significant time in solitude. The practice of noticing synchronicities also creates a sense of being guided rather than isolated. Even in periods of apparent social drought, meaningful coincidences can create a sense of connection to something larger than yourself, what Jung might call the self, or the collective unconscious. As you continue exploring why you don't have many friends, consider tracking synchronistic events in your life. Notice when seemingly random encounters provide exactly what you need at a particular moment. Pay attention to recurring themes or symbols that appear across different relationships. These patterns might reveal that your social landscape, however limited it may seem, is orchestrated with profound intelligence to support your unique journey. Building on our exploration of synchronicities, we now turn to a critical concept that might explain why traditional friendships have become difficult or impossible for you. This difficulty isn't a sign of failure, but potentially a crucial turning point in your spiritual development. Jung defined the persona as the social mask we wear to adapt to cultural expectations, our public face that allows us to function in society. Everyone develops a persona. It's a necessary part of human development. We learn which aspects of ourselves to present in different situations and which parts to keep private. For most people, this mask works reasonably well throughout life, allowing them to maintain numerous social connections without significant inner conflict. But for some individuals, a profound shift occurs. The persona that once functioned smoothly begins to crack or no longer feels authentic. This experience, what we might call the broken persona, can trigger a period of social withdrawal or difficulty that looks like failure from the outside, but actually represents a spiritual awakening. If you found yourself increasingly unable to engage in small talk, participate in social rituals that once seemed natural, or present yourself in ways that attract and maintain friendships, you might be experiencing this phenomenon. Your social mask isn't working because you've outgrown it, not because there's something wrong with you. The spiritual meaning behind this experience is profound. Jung believed that the second half of life naturally involves turning inward and developing a more authentic relationship with the self. The persona that served you in the first half of life focused on social adaptation, career development, and establishing your place in the community, may become increasingly uncomfortable as your inner truth evolves. This discomfort often manifests as a growing sense of alienation from social groups you once fit into easily. Conversations that previously felt engaging might now seem shallow or draining. Activities you once enjoyed with friends might feel empty or performative. These changes don't mean you've become antisocial. They signal that your soul is calling for greater authenticity than your existing persona can accommodate. Consider how this might be appearing in your life. Perhaps you've noticed yourself becoming increasingly tongue-tied in social situations where you once felt confident. Or maybe you feel an almost physical resistance to presenting yourself in ways that previously attracted friends and acquaintances. These experiences can be disorienting and might even lead you to question your mental health or social abilities. Jung would suggest that this breakdown of the persona, while painful, serves an essential purpose in spiritual development. It creates the necessary crisis that forces us to develop a more authentic way of being in the world, one aligned with our deeper values and truth, rather than merely adapted to external expectations. This process typically involves a period of social contraction. As the old persona fails, but a new, more authentic way of engaging hasn't yet fully developed, many people experience a time of having fewer friends or social connections. This transition period can feel like walking through a wilderness, disorienting, isolating, but ultimately necessary for reaching new territory. The transformation of the persona doesn't mean abandoning all social masks. Even the most individuated person needs ways to interface with different social contexts. But it does mean developing a more transparent and flexible persona that allows more of your authentic self to shine through across different situations. This new approach to social engagement often results in fewer but deeper friendships. Rather than maintaining numerous connections based on a carefully crafted social image, you begin attracting people who resonate with your authentic self. These connections, while less numerous, contain a depth and meaning that more than compensates for their scarcity. The spiritual wisdom in this process involves recognizing that the breakdown of your social mask isn't a failure, but an invitation. Your difficulty maintaining friendships might be creating the necessary space for a more authentic way of relating to emerge. This transition doesn't happen overnight. It typically unfolds over months or years as you gradually learn to express your truth in ways that can be received by others. Jung himself experienced this transformation dramatically after his break with Freud, when many of his professional relationships dissolved. During this period of relative isolation, he developed the foundation for his most significant contributions. What looked like social failure from the outside was actually the necessary condition for his authentic work to emerge. As you navigate this terrain, patience and self-compassion become essential. The development of a more authentic way of being with others involves trial and error. There will be awkward moments, misunderstandings, and connections that don't sustain. But each experience provides valuable information about how to bring your truth into relationship without compromising your integrity. The broken persona, viewed through Jung's perspective, transforms from a social liability into a spiritual asset. It creates the crisis necessary for authentic growth and paves the way for connections based on truth rather than adaptation. Your reduced social circle might be the perfect laboratory for developing this new way of being in the world. As we arrive at our final exploration, we bring together everything we've discovered about the spiritual meaning behind your social landscape. This culmination reveals how what appears to be isolation might actually be the cocoon from which your highest self emerges. Throughout our journey, we've seen how the unconscious shadow influences your relationships, how the hermit archetype shapes your natural tendencies, how the tension between individuation and connection creates necessary friction, how synchronicities appear in the spaces between relationships, and how the breakdown of your social persona forces a more authentic way of being. Now we discover how all these elements serve a singular purpose: spiritual rebirth. Jung understood that genuine transformation rarely occurs in comfortable circumstances. The alchemists he studied used the Latin phrase solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine, to describe the necessary breakdown of existing structures before something new could emerge. Your reduced social circle creates precisely these conditions for inner alchemy. Isolation, when approached consciously, creates a container for transformation that busy social lives rarely allow. Without the constant reinforcement of who others think you are, you become free to discover who you might become. The discomfort of loneliness, rather than something merely to be escaped, becomes the pressure that forces growth in new directions. Consider how history's spiritual traditions have recognized this principle. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. Buddha left his community to meditate alone under the Bodhi tree. Moses encountered the divine on a solitary mountain. These stories aren't just religious metaphors, they reflect a psychological truth that Jung recognized. Profound transformation often requires a period of separation from ordinary social life. The rebirth that emerges from conscious isolation isn't a return to your previous social patterns, but an evolution beyond them. When you fully engage with the spiritual meaning of your social situation, rather than merely trying to fix it, something remarkable happens. You develop what Jung called a relationship with the self, an inner connection that becomes the foundation for a new way of relating to others. This inner relationship transforms how you experience isolation. What once felt like painful loneliness gradually becomes solitude, a rich, generative state that nourishes rather than depletes. This shift doesn't happen automatically, but through conscious engagement with the inner work that isolation makes possible: reflection, creative expression, dream work, and the development of inner resources that social distraction often prevents. The spiritual rebirth that emerges through this process manifests in several recognizable ways. You become less dependent on external validation, more comfortable with your own company, and more discerning about where and with whom you share your energy. You develop the capacity to be alone without being lonely, a profound achievement in our hyper-connected culture. Perhaps most significantly, you discover a paradoxical truth. The deeper your connection with yourself, the more authentically you can connect with others. The friendships that eventually emerge from this transformed state possess a quality rarely found in ordinary social connections. They're based not on mutual distraction or shared personas, but on recognition of each other's authentic being. Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his clinical work. Patients who courageously engaged with periods of social contraction often emerged with renewed vitality and the capacity for more meaningful relationships. What appeared initially as social failure revealed itself as a necessary stage in developing a more individuated approach to connection. Your own rebirth might already be showing subtle signs. Perhaps you've noticed moments of unexpected peace in situations where you would previously have felt lonely, or maybe you've experienced connections with new people that seem to arise organically from your authentic interests rather than conscious social effort. These small shifts signal the beginning of a transformed relationship with both yourself and others. The spiritual meaning behind your limited friendships ultimately reveals itself as an invitation to a more conscious way of being in the world. Rather than unconsciously adapting to social expectations or desperately seeking connection to avoid inner emptiness, you develop the capacity to choose relationships that align with your authentic self and purpose. This doesn't mean you'll remain perpetually isolated. Many who journey through this transformation eventually develop rich social lives. But these connections differ qualitatively from their previous relationships. They arise naturally from shared values and authentic expression, rather than social obligation or the need to maintain a particular image. As you continue exploring why you don't have many friends, consider embracing this period as potentially the most significant spiritual opportunity of your life. The emptiness you feel isn't merely an absence to be filled, but a space being cleared for something new to emerge. By engaging consciously with this process, rather than merely trying to escape it, you transform what appears to be social failure into the foundation for profound spiritual growth. Jung's wisdom offers this final insight. What the world sees as your greatest weakness may actually be the seedbed of your unique contribution. The very qualities that make conventional friendship difficult, your depth, authenticity, or unwillingness to compromise your truth, might be precisely what allows you to offer something of genuine value to those ready to receive it.